Hello SUMC, Rob here, reporting in from one of SUMC Music's local offices with some more thoughts and another friendly check-in to continue to hope you're safe and well and to encourage you to stay in touch. There's a phrase, it's something about biting the hand that feeds you, and usually I try not to do that, but one of the hymns this past Sunday reminded me that the faith we sing really bugs me sometimes. The Faith We Sing is, of course, our secondary hymnal. I'm going to bypass my issues with how they marketed the thing back just before 2001, which is to say, if they'd included in their promo sampler more items like I'll Fly Away and Eternal Father Strong to Save, and fewer items like, well, all those late 1990s praise band songs that we never program as congregational hymns, and there's a good reason for that, well, they might have sold more copies of The Faith We Sing than they actually did. Anyway, no, this week I'm going to crack on The Faith We Sing for two things it does, which are either overly murky or which bug the heck out of me. First thing, to you in the pews who have floppy little softcover copies of The Faith We Sing, it's the only ones out there in the pews, the layout of last Sunday's last hymn on the page may have been a bit of a mystery too, whether you're a music reader or not. It started with a section marked refrain, then below that it had a section with 3 sets of words which were marked 1, 2, and 3, so verses. But you were meant to sing not refrain, verse 1, refrain, verse 2, refrain, verse 3, refrain, a la lots of other hymns in both The Faith We Sing and our regular hymnal, but refrain, verse 1, refrain, verse 2, verse 3, and stop. And the only way you could have known that was if you knew about a pair of tiny markings at the very end of the last line of music on the page. One was DC, and one was DS. If you knew that DC stood for da capo, which is Italian for to the head, then you knew to finish verse 1 and go back to the top of the page and start again at the refrain. If you knew that DS stood for dal segno, which is Italian for to the sign, then you knew to finish verse 2 and go back to a sign? Yes, right at the place where the verses began, there was a symbol that looked like a letter S with a slash through it and a couple of dots in the middle. Basically, the sign looks like a letter S that got hit by a truck. And that's the segno, the sign that you were bouncing back to. But if you didn't know that, you might have guessed refrain verse 1, refrain verse 2, but after that, you might have been surprised that we didn't go back to the refrain again. Yes? Familiar? Yes? On the Thursday night prior, the choir had to work this out too, just to make sure we could properly lead the hymn. And there's where my second thing comes into play. There are several editions of The Faith We Sing. Now, one of them is the little floppy book that you see in the pews. Another is the spiral-bound edition that the choir carries. Very often, not always, but a lot, we choir types have 4-part soprano, alto, tenor, bass versions of the particular hymn to read, while the pew copies only have a single-line melody. Our spiral-bound copies are called the Singer's Edition, which to me has always raised the question, what, does that mean that the people in the pews are non-singers? Not in our Methodist churches, that's not the case. But also, what about the people in the pews who might be interested in singing one of the other voice parts? Well, those folks belong in the choir, but that's another video for another day. There's also a keyboard version, which has accompaniment parts to the hymns, which would take up a lot of space if they were included in your Faith We Sing copies, and also it might be tougher in that case for you to find the vocal part that you're meant to sing. There's also a guitar version that has extra guitar chord symbols and charts and such. All of this would be fine if one thing were not true. Sometimes the layout of a hymn is different from version to version. This Sunday's last hymn was a case in point. You had the DC and DS instructions. The choir's spiral-bound version had repeat signs and first and second endings and such instead. Now, these are the repeat signs. Whether you're conscious of it or not, you've seen a lot of these in both our hymnals. Basically, any notes or lyrics that are between these signs get performed more than once. 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, you'd usually say. In this case, the only reason the choir version was laid out that way was because it made it easier to indicate to the choir that there was an optional choral ending to the hymn tacked on after that third verse that everyone got to sing. We opted not to sing it last week, but it's there in our choir parts. Problem is, it's not indicated in the pew copies of The Faith We Sing. Why is this a problem? Because, as happened recently, sometimes the choir will decide to sing that extra stuff at the end, but since you in the pews can't see it, you may hear the choir keep singing and you may possibly wonder, did I miss something? Is there some music instruction that I didn't understand and so I'm doing it wrong? Should I be singing right now? Am I a musical failure? The answers to those questions are yes, yes and no, no, and most importantly, no, you're not a musical failure. The hymnal just isn't helping you, which is not the hymnal's job. When we do sing an extra choral ending with the choir, I have done and will continue to do this. I'll jump up and actively look like I'm conducting the choir so that perhaps you can grasp that this is the bit sung by the choir only, so you'll know it's the choir's to sing, and so you'll know that you shouldn't worry about whether you missed something. Get in? So yes, this is me cracking on one of our hymnals. But I'm doing so in defense of all the singers at SUMC who happen not to have a singer's edition with them. You are wonderful, you are awesome, you are not incompetent. I got your back on this one. Got that? Cool. Anyway, please check back here every Friday afternoon if you like for more video hellos here on SUMC's Facebook page or on the SUMC YouTube channel, Sudbury United Methodist Church 2501. My email address will appear here momentarily. Please feel free to use it anytime for any reason. I'm always more than happy to talk or email or text back and forth with you about whatever we chat about here, and I will always have your back. Because no matter how, no matter what, doing the work of the church together is the big thing. Keep in touch, keep the faith, stay connected.